Hey, thanks for stopping by. If this is your first time here, Capitalism is a pop culture podcast where we evaluate what African movies and TV shows show and tell us about society. The themes we commonly touch on are race, class, gender, and sexuality, all through a social justice lens. We pick out a movie or TV show that I enjoyed watching, and each week we cover a different theme before moving on to the next show. Currently, we're looking at drum rolls. Namaste Wahala. Namaste Wahala is a Nigerian romantic comedy that was released in 2021. It's the story of Chidinma, aka Didi and Raj. Didi is a Nigerian lawyer and Raj is an Indian investment banker or some money type thing like that. They meet in the cheesiest way you ever saw, fall in love, their parents crump their stuff by saying hell no, they fight, break up, cue a heartbreak montage to revel the best of them. Then sufficient time passes, things happen and they make up. Hello, happily ever after, yay! Namaste Wahala will be a 6-part review. The 6 key themes we'll look at are 1. Fat girls and sex, 2. Capitalism and relationships, black tax in particular, 3. Capitalism and relationships, on succession in particular, 4. Gender and housework, 5. Violence against women, and 6. Relationships, love and romance. Hope you enjoyed as much as I enjoyed making it. Let's talk about relationships, love and romance. Given that Namaste Wahala is a romantic comedy, I think it's important that we examine the stories it has to tell us about romance and relationships in general. The main story is that of Raj and Didi, so we'll start with that and then briefly touch on the other relationships. Didi and Raj meet in the cheesiest way ever. It feels like something a teenager at the height of their mills and bone face would write. Anyway, they literally bump into each other while on their morning runs. Then they stare at each other interminably. It just goes on, and Jesus Christ, when it ends, you're filled with this palpable relief. Anyway, immediately after, Raj tells his friend Ima, who was on the run with him and like us was forced to suffer through that endless beach scene, that he's going to marry the girl from the beach. He's going to marry the girl he knows nothing about, and I mean nothing. All he knows about her is she's hot, i.e., she turns him on, and perhaps he gets a good vibe from her. Apparently, Raj believes in love at first sight, and I don't know what to do with that. How is it possible to be a fully grown adult who still believes in love at first sight? It just sounds so infantile, so immature, so naive. Like, did you just get here from Mars? How are you even like this? How are you possibly surviving a world with wars and climate change, hunger and disease, Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg, with beliefs like love at first sight? Like, how are you even alive? I know how. At least one how. You have to be rich and insulated from the beatings of life to be this naive. Which brings me to my next issue. I swear to God, I'm sick and tired of all these love stories for the rich. For some reason, it's like we can only tell romance stories featuring the wealthy. And when poor, precarious people are on there, it's either for comedic relief or they're getting paired with a rich fella in some kind of Cinderella story. The African shows I've watched most recently all tell stories of rich protagonists. There's Blood and Water with a rich family and a poor family, How to Ruin Christmas, again with a rich and poor family thing, Isoken with a white man, The Wedding Party 1 and 2 overflowing with wealthy people. It's like we can only tell such fanciful falling in love stories about the rich. Like we can't imagine telling such soft stories about people overwhelmed with anxiety about how they'll pay their rent. Is this our interpretation of Maslow's hierarchy of needs? A conviction that people racked with anxiety about the rising cost of living cannot be the protagonists in a sweet romantic story? They're not there yet, I guess. If you're still worrying about food, you cannot possibly have the capacity to worry about a romantic interest. Or so we're encouraged to believe by these narratives. It feels to me like an erasure of poor people, an erasure of average people. Beyond an erasure, I think it also functions as capitalist propaganda designed to elevate the lives of the wealthy and fan the flames of the desire for such a lifestyle in us. It makes love and romance look like something that is exclusive to the wealthy. Love and romance are free and accessible, at least in theory, to all human beings, yet somehow the stories make it look like it goes hand in hand with wealth. I think it's closely related to the growth of that whole no cookie for broke man. If you're broke, somehow there's a prevailing narrative about how you don't deserve the cookie. It's crazy because most of us are broke, which is to say most or at least many Many men are broke. While this love only for those who can afford it thinking affects both men and women, the argument can be made that it affects men more. You hear young men complaining about not being able to compete with the older, moneyed men when it comes to winning the affections of young women. As the great Fatboy Gwash told us, which is to say, young women go for rich men, sponsors, blessers. In this film, Didi's father is a wealthy lawyer, Raj is some kind of financial type, an investment banker. Then there's the CEO of the hotel who's into the Indian Galila. Society equates masculinity with financial muscle, and so men who are lacking financially are also perceived and perceive themselves to be lacking somehow as men. This is dangerous in a capitalist society which is structured in ways that allow only a few to flourish at the top, while majorities struggle to eke out a living at the bottom. How can we suggest that only wealthy people, wealthy men, deserve love and companionship and affection? Also, this conflation of wealth with morality and goodness in capitalist society is nuts. Rich men deserve the cookie because they're rich, and somehow that also means they're good, and poor men don't deserve it because they're broke and therefore not good or deserving. It's class warfare. This idea that only people of a certain class deserve a certain standard of living and comfort, this dearth of romantic stories starring poor people is pure capitalist propaganda and it needs to end. I want to see poor people falling in love and supporting each other through the main hardships of life. That's what I want to see. I've seen enough of the fantastical escapist fairy tale stories and now I'm ready for some real world romance with real people. I can get how one can get on board with the no cookie for broke men argument. If men believe that all they bring to the table is money and refuse to be supportive partners in other ways, then definitely no romance without finance. That's the rules of the game you've set, and that's your problem if you're losing. In order for the no cookie for broke men thing to end, men have to start bringing more to the table and being equal partners. Except y'all still want patriarchal shit like being the head of the household, which means there's no romance without finance. Ooh, I swear, no romance without finance. I think a lot about the conversation that's on YouTube between James Baldwin and Nikki Giovanni. He talks about how when men don't have something to bring home, when they don't have money, they just don't come home altogether. And Nikki's like, what she cares about is you. You just come home, we'll deal.
We're not like in disagreement. What I'm trying to maybe get you to relate to is that, and I lay it on black men because I'm a black woman.
You have every right to.
I'm sure it's that arbitrary.
No, you have every right to.
But a guy, let's say a guy's going with girl.
Mm-hmm.
You're going with Maybelle. And Maybelle gets pregnant. All of a sudden, you can't speak to Maybelle because you don't have the money for a crib, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
She doesn't need a crib. The baby's going to sleep someplace. If you can follow me for 2 seconds, wait. Baby's going to sleep someplace. The baby's going to eat something. But what she needs at that moment is a man. Mm-hmm. And in order, if the man functions as a man,
mm-hmm.
which is not necessarily a provider for all that stuff, because everybody can understand why you can't buy something. You don't have a job. You didn't have a job when you were always going to bed.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you going to get a job because she got pregnant? You understand? There's no job. But what she needs is a man to come by and say, hey, baby, you look good. And black men refuse to function like that because they say, I want to bring the crib when I come.
Baby,
you're never going to get the crib.
Baby.
Bring yourself.
Baby, I agree with you. I understand what you're saying, you know. But let me tell you this, you know, you may be absolutely right, and you are right from your point of view.
It's arbitrary.
But you have to understand my point of view.
I'm trying.
You know. And from my point of view, well, if you were pregnant, I would act very differently. But that's me. That's something else. But from the man's point of view, given the fact, as we said much earlier, that the standards of the civilization into which you were born are first outside of you, and by the time you get to be a man, they're inside of you. And this is not susceptible to any kind of judgment. It's a fact. If you're treated a certain way, you become a certain kind of person. If certain things describe you as being real, they're real for you, whether they're real or not. And in this civilization, a man who cannot support his wife and his child is not a man.
You don't have to have money to come, and this is my thing too. Men have to realize that they can bring more to the table than money. The only problem with that realization is that you then have to bring more to the table than just money. Money is easy. The rest, being a present partner, that shit is far harder than just buying and paying for shit. When Raj tells Ima that he's going to marry the girl from the beach, Ima says that's not how things are done in Nigeria. He says in Nigeria you have to toast the girl, take her out, take her friends out, that sort of thing. Once again, the suitability of a man is linked to his economic status. This man paying for things and buying things for women is so problematic to me, especially in the way it's commonly framed as one directional. It looks like women are the winners in this arrangement because it's the men shouldering the burden of buying things, but I think that's just one angle of it. I think that while it places the burden on men, it also gives them the power. It's like the whole dating thing where it's men who are supposed to initiate it all, from asking women out on dates to asking them to get married. It looks like the burden is on men and they risk rejection and all, but it also places the power in their hands. So men decide who to ask out, and women wait to be asked even when they have someone in mind. It leaves women in a passive position even if they hint and do other things to express their interest. When they do go out, the man has to pay for things and buy her things to show his affection and commitment. This continues to perpetuate the idea that women are materialistic and only interested in men because of the stuff they get out of it, and also further encourages men to equate paying for things with somehow purchasing the woman herself. It's why people continue to have discussions and debates about what women owe men who have spent money on them. If a man buys you something, even something as small as a drink, then there's an expectation that a woman should reciprocate in some way, usually a sexual way. This puts women at risk of assault and even murder from men who feel like they somehow purchased sexual favors from women because they spent money on them. I think in an equal relationship, both men and women would occupy the roles of pursuer and pursued. It would not fall on one party to pursue and ask, but both would do it. The same applies to spending money on each other. Both would take care of each other in every way, financially and otherwise. Historical factors that have privileged men and continue to privilege them cannot be ignored when talking about this because, more often than not, men have more money than women. The problem is, men are not encouraged to spend money on women because women have historically been disadvantaged and so men are more likely to be wealthy. Nope. Men are encouraged to do it because somehow that proves their masculinity and cements their position as the head of the relationship and eventually the marriage. Speaking of marriage, why is it the end game? The goal of romantic relationships. Raj, within minutes of meeting Didi, tells Ima, his friend, that that's the girl he's going to marry. Then they meet at a fundraiser for abused women, and it's one of the first things he tells her. Hey, this may be why I'm not married and will never be. If a fella I know nothing about tells me he's going to marry me, I cannot envision a situation in which I start to blush. All I can see is me running in the opposite direction and calling upon my ancestors to protect me from the wickedness presently pursuing me. Someone wanting to marry you when they know nothing about you is a huge red flag, especially when that someone is a man. The good news is Raj and Didi are a good fit. They're both residents of La La Land, where people say inexplicably dumb shit like, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. At the risk of sounding like a broken record, this is the kind of nonsense that only rich people can say without experiencing any cognitive dissonance. It is also counter-revolutionary logic. If you truly believe that what's meant to be will be, then you believe that what is what was meant to be, and what currently is in the world, huh? Widespread poverty and inequality, worsening climatic conditions, destruction of entire ecosystems, control of entire nations by a few elite holding all of the world's wealth. It's counter-revolutionary to believe that things are as they're meant to be, or that they happen as they're meant to. Also, when people say that whole meant to be thing, meant to be by whom? Who's this person meant to be in shit that would then just have to accept as the gospel truth? Back to our crazy lovers. Raj tells Didi that he told his friend this morning that he would marry her. Like a good girl, she blushes. Enter dating sequence, and after 3 months, he says he wants to meet her parents. Like any normal person who's only been dating for 3 months, she freaks out. When she tells her friend Angie, all she gets is fear mongering about not knowing what the market is saying, i.e., if she doesn't go along with what he wants, she may lose him. And then what will she have? Nothing. That's what. She'll die all alone, and no one will find her body for weeks. And people will watch it on the news and shake their heads pitifully, wondering how people end up like that. Didi says she's not ready, that it's too early, and that her father wants her to marry this lawyer guy called Somto. Despite her reservations, after fear-mongering from Angie and threats of being outed by a lawyer from her father's law firm, she eventually tells her mother, who is overjoyed. Raj meets her parents, and it does not go well for many reasons, including the fact that he's Indian. And she didn't tell her parents in advance. Her mother was overjoyed about a black Nigerian fellow, not this Indian thing. What's interesting to me about Raj and Didi, and also what was one of the most disappointing things in the film for me, was how they don't talk. They just don't talk about anything of consequence with any depth. Even after they make up, after that disastrous introduction to her parents and a follow up introduction to his mother that goes just as poorly, they don't talk. They don't talk about race and the complications that come with an interracial relationships. They don't talk about why they were each hesitant to reveal race details to their parents. They don't talk about how they will navigate future challenges that are likely to come with the race thing. They don't even talk about normal couple things that shows that they're getting to know each other. They don't talk about how she felt 3 months was too soon, and the only reason she told her parents was because she was afraid they'd hear it from someone else, and maybe even she felt pressured to do it by him and his insistence on marriage. It felt like such a missed opportunity, them not having these conversations, especially about race, and especially considering all the complications they had to deal with because they weren't able to talk about it in the beginning. Having gone through all that drama, they should have at some point towards the end had a conversation about the challenges ahead and how they'll handle them better as a married couple. Also, what is this obsession with marriage? Good God. It used to be that marriage was a symbol of commitment. Yes, but one would think that with all the infidelity we see, we'd all be thoroughly disabused of that fallacious notion. Marriage is not synonymous with commitment. We all know this. So why is this obsession with marriage still alive? I don't know, but I think it's just part of this desire to hold on to things, especially patriarchal things that maintain a certain order we're used to. It maintains the old order of things, including the place of women, the role of men, with sexual pairings are legitimate, then other things that uphold that old order view, including capitalism and private property. Questioning the place of marriage and its value may also mean questioning other foundational things like religion, which is dangerous, especially for the people in power who benefit from the social control religion and other ancient worldviews have on people. We should all emancipate ourselves from this marriage as the goal and evidence of a legitimate relationship. This is especially true for women. An institution that began with ideas like women were a man's property is beyond reform. It just needs to be scrapped off altogether. Then we can come up with new terms of engagement. At some point, Didi has a fight with her dad, and she leaves home. She tells her mother she may go to her best friend Anji's place, but instead ends up going to Raj's place. When her mom starts looking for her, she goes to Angie's, where she finds Angie smack dab in the middle of sexy times with some guy. What does Didi's mother say? Something about nobody buys the cow when they can have the milk for free. I discussed this whole dangerous, idiotic rhetoric at length in the segment of this clip. Let's talk about buying the cow, though, which is this idea of marriage legitimizing relationships. Like whatever super fun, consensual things Angie's doing with that guy are not valid and or acceptable because they are not married. Marriage is an age-old way of controlling women and their sexual desire. So society frowns upon single and encumbered women having sex with partners of their choice and enjoying it, but has nothing to say about men doing that, whether they're married or not. Marriage is about controlling women, and I think women should just emancipate themselves from the idea that they need the state or whatever religious body to legitimize their sexual relationships. The other romantic relationship in the film is this pedestrian, secreted marriage trap between the Indian woman Leila and a man who is later revealed to be the CEO of some hotel. Ugh. He sends flowers and chocolates and other gifts to her office. She has no idea who it is, and this is supposed to be romantic. There's something so cowardly and pathetic about executing some secret admirer ploy in the name of romance. You know what you are? Creepy. Also, this idea that secretly sending a woman stuff is evidence of affection and that it butters her up for your reveal is so dense and not to mention dangerous. This is the kind of logic that perpetuates ideas like all women want is a guy with money. It allows men to imagine women can easily be manipulated with stuff and also bought with stuff. It goes back to that whole if you pay for things, a woman owes you something. This idea of gifts as something men give women is an ongoing theme in the show. Ima tells Raj he has to take Didi and her girls out, toast them. The spineless CEO sends gifts to Leila's office. In the show, Didi and Raj are watching at Raj's place. The man gives the woman a gift. There's something disturbingly one-sided about this. Don't men like receiving gifts? It's also dangerous to keep reinforcing the idea that men get love, i.e., get women, by giving them stuff, by spending money on them. This requires the barest of bare minimum of men in relationships. It's why men have long been able to say shit like, I pay the bills, so a woman has no business asking you to do more. It's also a return to the idea that only men with money to spend on women deserve love, and also that spending money on women gives you certain rights or ownership. Some transactional thing where if you pay for something, she owes you something. Going back to that infantile, secret admirer story, this storyline bothered the crap out of me for reasons that were not always obvious to me. There's the whole getting a woman by getting her stuff, but there was more that was difficult to articulate even to myself. At the risk of sounding like a true crime obsessed person, which I'm not, there's something stalkerish about that whole secret admirer thing, which a random person on Reddit concurred with, if it makes a difference. You've had it said in this film that secret admirers are sexy. Verily, verily, I say unto you, what is truly sexy is a man that has confidence and can communicate using words. That shit comes in handy when you're trying to build a relationship. Then the craziest shit I've seen in a long time happened. Roger's mother comes home and finds our lovers cuddling on the seat. Didi, it turns out, is not wearing any pants, and she's wearing Roger's shirt, which, hilarious. Anyway, the strangest thing happens. Roger's mother, who is for some reason under the impression that they're not having sex, or knows that they're having sex and actively wants to cramp their style, says the only way Didi gets to stay is if she and Raj are not sharing a room. Show of hands. Who here can tell us what's happening? Because, good Lord, what is this? You have a grown-ass man who cannot share a room and bed with his girlfriend because his mother is home. Because I'm guessing you can't bang your girlfriend in your house if your mother's in the same house? Okay, can someone explain it to me? Because she would sleep in that house with them if they had stood in front of family and friends in an expensive ceremony and signed a special government paper saying that they will bang no one but each other, right? So what's the difference? What difference does that magical government paper make to her if they bang without the paper? Does she hear them louder than she would if they had the special paper? I don't get that, but it's fine. I can get past it. What I can't get past is how Didi shares a room with his mother. Y'all crazy. Bitch, please. I got a home. I got friends who have couches. I'm out of here. I will not sleep with your mother. I just won't. Bye. It's especially strange because this woman does not like Didi and doesn't even pretend. So why would you as Didi sleep with her? And if you're Raj, why would you let that happen? I'm confused, Joe. Anyway, let's talk about the parents' relationship. Raj's parents have the kind of relationship that I suppose is normal for their age, and I just kind of go into everything that bothered me about it. Didi's parents' relationship is easier to get into. I hated it. To be specific, I hated her mother's role in relation to her father. The first scene involving Didi, her father, and her mother includes a conversation that makes everyone at the table uncomfortable. Didi's father, in what appears to be something he does often, devalues Didi's work at the NGO that helps abused women, and then follows that with matchmaking between Didi and Somto, a lawyer who works at his law firm. Instead of saying anything in defense of her daughter, Didi's mother, Shola, walks off in a huff. Didi's dad does this devaluing of her work again, this time when they're having lunch with Raj and his mother. Still, Shola, Didi's mother, does not speak up in defense of her daughter. It's Raj's mother who does it and calls out Didi's father for his sexist views. It really pisses me off that it's an Indian woman who does speak up to the sexist African man and not the African woman he lives with, who's been seeing him do this shit forever. It would have been better for me if it was Didi's mother who'd finally had enough and told her husband off instead of some racially contentious scene where it's an Indian woman who calls out the African man. Anyway, back to Raj and Didi. I give it a year. Max. Until next time, guys. Remember who you are. Love life. Love people. Stay loyal.